Hello and welcome to ESG Talk. This episode of the chat, we're going to talk about dealing with acronyms, moving from deflection to determination. When I started my career, I ended up working across 4 different industries. And being an industry spanner, I learned one very fundamental fact. And that was that every industry, every business has acronyms. As I transitioned into financial services, and the first time in that industry, I had a really great colleague, Jerry Patterson. Jerry was phenomenal. He and I had served on a community board together, and when I first came to the organization, he was one of our senior leaders and executives of our retirement business. He sat me down and would often help me navigate the differences across the industries and to think like a business owner as well as an integral leader at our company. I remember one of the discussions I had with him sitting at a lunchroom table was like, Jerry, I've come from fields that have so many acronyms, but finance has so many more acronyms. You've got FP&A, M&A, ROI, CapEx, MX, P&L, IPO, ETF, and then the Fed. And then there's also, in addition to those acronyms, each area of our business has its own acronyms. I feel like I need a cheat sheet in order to figure out what the heck people are saying in meetings. And Jerry so calmly chuckled and he said to me, Mandy, yes, every business has acronyms, but don't let that deflect from your determination. And that really helped me to show up to different meetings. And I really started to write down every term I didn't know. Got better and better at phrases of asking somebody to unpack something for me. Or I would say, you're saying IR. This happened just last week. You're in Workiva. You're saying IR. I come from a field where IR means investor relations. But in fact, the person was talking about integrated risk. So I started to ask more questions or ask people if they could define acronyms so that we could bring more commonality of understanding to meetings. And I'm so thankful that Jerry told me to not let it deflect, but build in me a determination. When I look out at the news right now and everyone complaining that ESG is acronym soup, and yes, some global standardization will be helpful. Yes, a framework of acknowledgement that we can work across the globe is needed. But we need to take a note of the over 100-year history of finance to know that acronyms will always exist in every field, in every industry. In fact, just take tax. Tax will be variant across different countries, even in the United States, different states. So we can't let this deflect from real, determined progress to drive business and society value forward. So what are some things that you as an executive and as a team can do as you work together towards your environment, social, and governance strategies and goals? Well, this is going to be a new field for all different teams: finance, legal, ESG. So the first thing you can do for determination is come to meetings and really ask people when they use an acronym to define it so that we make sure we have a common understanding. Give permission in the room for people to say, excuse me, literacy moment, can you tell me what that means so that we can have a common understanding? And finally, if you're in the room and you don't know, ask. Ask to unpack it for you, educate you on, help you understand. I remember sitting in my first investment committee meeting and I had to write down every single term that the group was using because that was not my background. I left the meeting, went to work, looked at trying to understand it a little bit more. I also had spent some time with a remarkable president who was on our board that sat me down and talked to me about the role that I was playing in that committee was to ask if we were meeting both the business objectives and society objectives forward in a responsible manner. And my job as I seek to understand the different sleeves of the investments, which she showed and shared with me, was to get at the heart of the real questions and to not be afraid to ask the room to boil it down to the simplest diameter possible so that we can come up with progress and a simple solution. So, what can you do about the acronym soup of ESG? Well, I'll tell you what my good friend Jerry said. Don't let it be the deflection, let it fuel your determination. We're going to put in the show notes 2 resources of fellow podcasters. One that I had the privilege to be with Caitlin over in ESG Decoded back in July. Great as she decodes different acronyms for individuals. We have an episode coming up around Sustainability Decoded this month in September with Tim Mohan, who was earlier in the show, as well as his co-host, Caitlin, as they seek to make sustainability simple and ask really good questions to help us all move forward to adding value. Thanks so much for tuning in to this chat. We'll talk real soon.